Hello, everyone. I'm Jack Hammer. This is my partner, Jesse Naylor. Welcome to episode number 4 of the Hammer and Nail Show, where we break down 49ers football and get down to the brass tacks. Tonight, we have a special guest of Suneil Gaitonde. He works with me for All49ers SI, and so we wanted to bring him in tonight as well. How are you guys all doing tonight?
Feeling great, man. Excited to be on the show. I wore my tie. We taking everybody to school today.
Yeah, I felt a little underdressed there for a second. Geez, Suneil.
Hey, man, I felt like I'm coming on the show. First experience. Might as well come dressed to impress, right?
Yeah, I love it. All right. That's fair.
There you go. Yeah, so, Suneil, we wanted to have you on a little bit because you had a really cool article on All49ers earlier this week regarding the quarterbacks. We just wanted to kind of break that down for us a little bit.
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, this whole Mac Jones thing kind of just was this huge avalanche that kind of consumed 49ers Nation for so long. And it was just like, for me, really hard to understand why, like, all of a sudden this guy Mac Jones came out of nowhere. And more importantly, like, how every single NFL media guy seemed to be like so sure that Mac Jones was going to be the pick. And when I started hearing all the reasoning, it all went back to, this whole stereotype that was kind of anointed on Shanahan, when it was like he only likes people that are like Kyle Shanahan, like Matt Ryan, like Kirk Cousins and all these kinds of people, Jimmy Garoppolo. And then when you actually do some research into where all of that stemmed from, it was really from the one decision that in 2017, that one draft, where obviously Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson were there. And he was the first year 49er head coach. He had the opportunity to pick these guys, and he needed a quarterback at the time. Instead, he chose to pass on them, make the most horrible first-round draft picks of all time in that draft. And, and then the whole plan was to, get Kirk Cousins the next offseason. Obviously, that didn't happen. So just because of that one decision that was made, all of a sudden, this whole stereotype has been placed on him that he hates quarterbacks that can actually move, hates quarterbacks that could be athletes. He would never pick up Patrick Mahomes, and it didn't make sense. And I think it just lacked a lot of perspective. So in that article, my whole point was just to put into perspective what the league was like in 2017, not looking at it from the prism of 2021, where we've already seen Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, be elite quarterbacks and so on and so forth. That wasn't the same perspective that everybody was seeing them in 2017. So that was really the purpose of the article.
Okay. Yeah, and I noticed that you kind of had mentioned in the article that the drafting of Kyler Murray was kind of the first step in kind of breaking that cycle. Is that right?
Well, what I meant by that was, up until that point, the mobile quarterback was always picked, lower in the draft. And you could even look back, you could even go farther. So I started from 2015, but you could even go farther back to see that mobile quarterback always was picked, later than the pocket passers. And in 2019 was the first time where you really saw the mobile quarterback in Kyler Murray picked over guys like Dwayne Haskins, over guys like Daniel Jones. So that was kind of the first time where you saw it pretty much change.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that Shanahan obviously gets killed for not taking those guys. And it came out this year that Lynch said, well, we really didn't even kick the tires on Mahomes. They obviously had a plan in place, and hindsight's 2020, but Kirk Cousins was an established quarterback at that time. And basically everybody under the sun thought that he would be coming to San Francisco. So, obviously with Mahomes and Watson turning out to be as great as they have, hindsight's 2020, but it wasn't it wasn't necessarily the worst decision then, but then to miss out on that and go get Jimmy Garoppolo, that's kind of where I am lost on the whole situation. It's like, well, if you had a plan to get Kirk Cousins the whole time, why did you then get away from that plan halfway through the first season? You knew you weren't going to be good. And that was kind of where my issue was with that that decision making.
Well, that also was a reactionary move to Kirk Cousins re-upping with Minnesota, right? So the problem was they thought he was going to be a free agent that offseason, and then they were going to be able to get him. And then Minnesota ended up extending him in that season. So that messed up the plan. So they had to scramble. Obviously, at that same time, the drama in New England was happening where, Tom Brady was going to Robert Kraft and saying, I need these Brissett and Garoppolo gone because I don't want any competition or whatever was going on then. And because of Shanahan and Belichick's relationship, they were able to make that deal happen as kind of like the plan B, where Kirk Cousins was plan A. But once again, like I said, I don't think this was based off of not liking mobile quarterbacks. I think what people do is they give all of the bashing to Kyle Shanahan versus giving all the praise to Andy Reid, because Andy Reid was really that one coach that was on the forefront of really realizing what a Patrick Mahomes could be. And even though he had a really solid quarterback in Alex Smith, who was obviously taking him to the playoffs and they were competing with Alex Smith, he saw that Patrick Mahomes is going to be the next wave of quarterback and, actually pulled the trigger, moved up to get him at 10. And it should be more that Andy Reid was more of a visionary versus Kyle Shanahan was just this like egotistical person that doesn't know quarterbacks and all this kind of stuff. Like, I just don't buy that narrative.
You know what the trend is for me? It has nothing to do with the mobile quarterback. It's the 49ers going and making panic moves. So you just said it. They panicked a little bit because they weren't going to get Kirk Cousins. They expected to get Kirk Cousins. So all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, let's call the Patriots. Let's try to get Tom Brady. Well, that's not going to work. Okay, well, let's get Jimmy Garoppolo. And here we are again where we're 5 years into the regime. Shanahan still doesn't have his guy. And boom, it almost looks like a panic move to get up to 3 to get maybe the third best quarterback, just depending on who they like. Maybe the guy they take, they really do believe is the best guy. I have a hard time believing that, but maybe that's the case. I don't know. It's kind of set off this firestorm of panic moves, and we've seen it happen, in my opinion, twice now. That's where the trend is. It has nothing to do with what type of quarterback. It's why they're making the moves and how reactionary they are versus being proactive. And
see, I would have to put some pushback on there, Jesse. I love you, but I'm taking no 49er slander today and no Shanahan slander. I am the anti-Grant Cohn when it comes to this type of stuff. So when you say panic moves, if I were to tell you to give up a second-round pick within 3 years, you make it to the Super Bowl, how would you feel about that deal?
I'd feel fine about it, but I don't think we made it to the Super Bowl really anything to do with Jimmy G. I think we carried him.
But did we not make it to the Super Bowl with that quarterback?
No, we definitely did. We did.
So when you think about that, if it wasn't for the injuries to Jimmy Garoppolo, wouldn't you say we'd still be a contending team?
I don't know. I'm not sold on Jimmy. I've really never been sold on Jimmy, and that's the issue. Is like we're making do with somebody that was never his first choice. And for him to say things like, well, I was a little depressed after not getting Cousins, and just he bashes Jimmy, and he does it in a way where he doesn't talk about Jimmy in a good light. And it's forceful when he does. I don't know, man. I feel like, again, 5 years in to not have your guy, why did you let that guy get force upon you if you were so against it? It's like you can't play both sides, Shanahan.
Well, see, that's where I don't understand kind of where it comes back. Once again, it's all about context, right? So at that time, the quarterback was I don't even remember the guy's name. Who was the quarterback for the 49ers that year?
Brian Hoyer started.
Brian Hoyer. All right, so Brian Hoyer is your quarterback. You know you need to upgrade from there. All right, you obviously your plan A got foiled because Minnesota re-upped on your plan A. You have an opportunity to get a quarterback, a starting caliber quarterback for a second-round draft pick. That quarterback comes in, and this guy, remember, Jimmy G wasn't signed to a long-term extension or anything at that time. It was really just going to be like a trial period. Maybe you get a backup out of it, or just see what it is. He goes off and he wins 5 games straight, right? Your team goes from somebody that's not competing to all of a sudden a team that looks like if they had Jimmy G the whole year, you're in the playoffs. And then you go ahead and be like, okay, we could win with this guy. Let us re-up him. And then what happens the next year? Season-ending injury, right? So then you have this guy, you already paid him because of, what happened the previous year. The next year, you make it, he comes back healthy, you make it to the Super Bowl. Right? So you're going off of the first experience, 5-0. Second year, you got all this hope. He gets injured. Third year, he comes back healthy. You make it to the Super Bowl. Now you have to make the decision. All right, this guy we just went to the Super Bowl with, do we get rid of him and go for a guy like Tom Brady when we're just coming off of a Super Bowl? Or do we see if we have a guy for another year? And obviously last year happened and, he got injured again. So now it's like, okay, we know Jimmy G's not the guy. I believe these 2 first-round picks that they went to move up to number 3 were for Deshaun Watson. That's why it took so long to actually pull the trigger. It wasn't until the Deshaun Watson news got to a point where you really can't trade for him this offseason that they made the move to number 3. So I really don't think that it's panic moves. I think on the flip side, the 49ers are really good at shifting and still making a move to stay at a contender or stay in the picture of being like a team that's competing without like mortgaging your whole future in the process. And I think that's actually shows sound leadership versus the panic moves like you wanted to put it. I think they're just really good at bypassing landmines because of the circumstances around their situation.
Can I say this real quick?
Sure.
Just a little revisionist history. It didn't sound right when you said it, and so I had to double check to make sure I wasn't tripping. He went to Minnesota that offseason. He had not been on Minnesota. He went from Washington to Minnesota that same offseason. So if you would have waited 5 more games, you could have had a shot at getting your guy. But all of a sudden you wait until 5 games are left in the season, or what they traded him with like 8 games left in the season or whatever when they got Garoppolo. If they would have just waited that season out, they could have gotten Kirk Cousins in the offseason, just like Minnesota got him. So why not stick to your plan? If your plan was, I'm not going to look at quarterbacks for a whole offseason because we got a guy that we have a chance to get, and then we're going to get midseason in, we're going to have 1 win, and let's go trade a second rounder for a guy that I don't want. Why don't you just stick to the plan? If your plan was Kirk Cousins, then your plan was Kirk Cousins. It was never Jimmy Garoppolo.
True, but and thank you for that, because that is exactly how it went down. But once again, like I said, they weren't necessarily committed to Garoppolo in the sense like that. It was just a second round pick for somebody that, let's take a look at this guy. Like everybody had been talking about Garoppolo. Why not get him in if you could get him? Like that was a steal at the time. Remember the way that trade was like talked about in the media?
They said that
they just gave him up. He was somebody that people thought would get a first rounder or even multiple round, and they were like, Belichick is just selling. Like he's petty and he's just selling them up. You know what I mean? Like just gave the 49ers a starting quarterback. So once again, everything is in context of where it is. They're making moves, obviously, as a and once again, we're always putting it on Kyle Shanahan, but he's not the only decision maker. But you try to make the best team that you can. If you get a chance to get a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, basically kind of cheap, why not see what he is? I guarantee you, if he went 0-5 and looked like he looked last season or when he got injured, they're not gonna re-up him for as much as they re-upped him. They'll probably still go with Kirk Cousins. But when you got a guy where the team seems to be behind him, he seems to be like loving it. He looks good. He could sell tickets, and you're winning. It's like, how do you not like move forward with that guy?
Yeah, I feel it. Go ahead, Jack.
It was a good move at the time, right? Everybody thought it was a good move. It was a second round pick, like you said. He performed really well when he first took over. His numbers were, the team won 5-0 compared to everything that they were doing before. His contract, the way that they structured his contract was pretty simple. It was just basically an extension of franchise tag numbers, and it was pretty easy to get out of him. We're seeing that now, and I think the injury history is really the biggest thing. If he hadn't struggled with the injuries this season and he had been healthy all the way through, I don't know if we're quite having the same conversation that we're having now as that we are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with you.
One other thing on
Zachy D, real quick. Zachy D says trading 2 future firsts for an established All-Pro quarterback in Watson is a lot different than trading the same for an unproven rookie. I'm with you.
Yeah, I agree, but what else do you do?
Yeah.
There's no other options at this point. It's like, and once again, like the 2 first round draft picks, I think are important because of the years that they gave them up. So Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are signed through, I guess, end of 2023. So they gave up 2022, they gave up 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So this is basically them telling Jed York, look, we need our guy, like Jesse, you're saying, this is our time to get our guy. We'll give up our first rounders, and we'll live or die by this pick. If by 2023 they're still in the same conundrum as they are right now, they're going to get fired, and the new regime's going to come in brand new in 2024. We'll have a first round pick. We'll be able to pick their own quarterback and be able to start fresh with however way they want to have set up. So I think this is just like circumstances that have all come into a game. Like they wanted Deshaun Watson, they can't get Deshaun Watson, so they need to get a quarterback. Kyle Shanahan doesn't want Jimmy G anymore, so they why not go up, get your quarterback right now? Because all the talk at 12 was like, why don't they go get their guy? Like, why don't, like, you know what I mean? Like now all of a sudden it's like, you pay too much to go get your guy. Like it's always going to be something with Kyle Shanahan, and I'm just not here for the slander anymore, Jesse. I'm not here for it, brother.
If I think there's a right choice and there's a wrong choice. We'll see who he ends up drafting. To me, when I look at it, let's take Kyle Shanahan out of it. Let's just say the front office, okay? Let's be fair here. If you had a clear plan in getting Cousins and you didn't kick the tires on any of the quarterbacks in that draft, and then you abort mission 8 games into the season, your first season, you go and get a quarterback, okay, great. So then the next bad decision was, instead of franchise tagging that quarterback and making him prove himself, you give him a big deal. He gets hurt. You then continue to not draft quarterbacks for the next 2 or 3 years. And now, boom, here we are, where we are in a situation that we really didn't have a choice. Whether it was Watson, whether it's moving up to 3, whatever that is, we don't have a choice but to go all in. I know we had to be in on Stafford, and it would have been the same situation. We weren't willing to give up, and I'm happy they didn't give up what the Rams gave up to get Stafford, but it's all a bunch of miscalculations along the way that's gotten us to this point. And you're right, they've got 2 years. If they don't figure it out, they're going to be gone, and it sucks because I really do believe in Shanahan. I think he's a freaking genius. I love everything that he brings to the table, but it's like, man, these slight miscalculations have snowballed into a real problem here.
Real quick, one last thing on Garoppolo, and I want to get back to the article because there was one thing that you said earlier, Suneil, that I thought I wanted to touch on. But the deal with Garoppolo, they could have franchise tagged him, and that's what they did. It's all they did. They franchised him. They just gave him multiple years, and it was a good deal on the contract because by doing it that way, they were able to throw $37 million into 2018, which then allowed them to have more money in 2019, and they went to the Super Bowl in 2019, partly because they had the extra money at that time. But circling back to a point you had made as far as Andy Reid, Andy Reid was ahead of the curve, I think maybe even before that, because you remember back when he was in Philadelphia, he had a quarterback that a lot of people didn't pay attention to when he was in college with Donovan McNabb. Mm-hmm. So he's a guy that's been kind of at the forefront of this a couple of different times.
I agree. He's like the quarterback whisperer. He had picked Kevin Kolb when he had Donovan McNabb, and then ended up trading him for like a 2nd or 3rd round pick. He picked Nick Foles, and then Nick Foles ended up being a Super Bowl winning quarterback. So like he is really good and he even made the trade for Alex Smith, and that really changed around Kansas City. So I really think that we should be praising Andy Reid more than like throwing mud on Kyle Shanahan. More Andy Reid just is ahead of the game when it comes to picking quarterbacks and seeing the future.
Yeah,
I hear. Just to kind of dovetail off of this, and we're still follow up with on the quarterback trail. Trevor Lawrence. There was an article that came out today in the ESPN. Basically, just to kind of paraphrase, he has his high school coach mentioning that he's a guy that could walk away from football right now if he wanted to. He doesn't need it. His dad coming out saying he doesn't necessarily want to go all out to win a Super Bowl. What do you guys make of that?
Yeah, it was a really weird flex. Like, I was reading the article and I was just like, why would you put this out like right now? Like, because you know how everything that comes out around this time is strategic. And I'm like, why is he doing it? So I had a couple of things. One, he doesn't want to go to Jacksonville. So he's trying to like diminish his stock somehow by making it seem like he's not going to be all in on football, or he's not somebody that's going to be playing like how like Tom Brady and how Aaron Rodgers is well into their like 40s. Maybe he wants, maybe like a Zach Wilson or Justin Fields to get picked to go to Jacksonville rather than him. That's like the one thing. The other thing is, I don't know, man, like maybe he just is as nonchalant as everybody's saying, like, or this article says, because, he's not showing up at the draft. He's, spending time with his family, staying, in his hometown or whatever it is. Like, he has the long hair. He has that whole kind of like, just like, yeah, bro, like, whatever, like look about him and all this kind of stuff. Maybe this just really is him. I don't think it should be that big of a fear for any team, because at the end of the day, he still chose to go to Clemson. He still competes his butt off every single game. He has that leadership ability. I mean, he was one of the prime people that came out during COVID to be like, we should have a college football season and trying to get everybody to play. So I don't think he lacks that fire to be competitive and try to win every game. But I think in this article, it just really shows that maybe football isn't his number one priority. And that's okay. Like, I mean, I don't know if you remember, there was a running back that got inducted into the Hall of Fame. I think it was not Marshall Faulk. Who was the other guy? Not Curtis Samuel. Who was the other guy from Indy that got the real good running back?
Edgerrin James?
Nah, I forget exactly. I think he played for the Eagles too. But anyways, he, in his Hall of Fame speech, he basically said that he'll never let his kids play football. He'll never be around football. You'll never hear him talk about football or anything anymore. He just played football as a job because he knew it was going to set his family tree up for the rest of his life. But he never really loved football. He was just really good at it. I think it was Curtis Samuel, but that's not I don't know. But don't quote me on it. But that was. Maybe Trevor Lawrence is that type of player where he knows he's really good at football. He enjoys like winning, but maybe he's just not like, it's not his passion. It's not his love. I don't think that means that he's going to like not give his 100%, because he's never shown anything under that in any other realm of his football life, at least.
It could have been Falk, honestly. Was it Falk?
Yes.
Marshall Falk? Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Maybe.
He played for Indy, went to the Rams.
No, I don't think it was him. It was somebody.
Curtis
maybe,
Martin?
I don't know. One of those running backs.
Yeah.
Was it Curtis Martin?
Jets? Was he a running back?
Yeah. Curtis Martin.
Yes, it was Curtis Martin.
Yeah, he was from he started off with the Patriots and then he went to the Jet.
Yeah, there you go.
So I picked all the wrong teams, but it was Curtis.
I'm like on the Colts train. I'm like, okay, who is it? The Colts. I agree with you. I don't think it's anything more than that. I don't think he obviously doesn't play with the chip on his shoulder. He made that very clear. For me, it's not going to do anything to his draft stock. He's clearly the number one guy. But this, I think you made a good point. Of whoever the running back was, let's just say it was Curtis Martin that said it. Not every athlete that plays football loves the game. It's right. Just, and I think fans have that misconception that, they all love it. It's like, no, to some of these guys, it really is a job. Now, there are those guys that do love the game. For me, that's who I'm looking for. I mean, if I have the number one pick, I'm trying to vet that out because, he may be the type of guy that's like, listen, peace. If he has an Andrew Luck injury streak for a couple of years, he'll be like, I'm out. I don't need this. Like I'm good looking. I can make money elsewhere. I'm only 25, 26. Like I'm out. And for me, that's not a bad thing. As a human, that's a smart thing. But if I'm running a football team, I'm trying to vet that stuff out. And, I think the way that I am and the way that I carry a chip on my shoulder is just kind of the way that I was raised with things. that's who I gravitate to. So when I hear Trey Lance or Justin Fields like go through trials and tribulations, like, and not only do they love football just like Lawrence does, but they have a true chip on their shoulder. That's who I want leading on my team. So
I agree.
Yeah, when I first heard it and read about it, I kind of agree with you, Suneil. That was really the first thought that went through my head, was that I think this is just something with where they don't really want to go to Jacksonville. They want to kind of put something out there, but they don't want to come out and be like the Mannings, where they're like, if I get up there, I'm not showing up. But they're just kind of throwing it out there, like, he's kind of nonchalant, whatever, what have you. Really, because they just don't want to end up in Jacksonville, because it's not a very good place to be from a football standpoint. I've never been there myself, but from a football standpoint, it's not a destination I think many people want to go, especially with the front office that they have now.
He doesn't want to play in London in 3 years.
for 3 years in a row. Yeah,
maybe he really doesn't like Urban Meyer.
Yeah,
yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So, kind of getting back now to the 49ers, everybody's talking about it. It's been the main topic now for almost a month. At number 3, 49ers are most likely going to be going quarterback. So I'll start off this time with Jesse. We'll let him start off. Jesse, who do you think the 49ers are going to be taking at 3? Or who should be the player at 3?
Yeah, so who I think they're going to take versus who should be the player, I think, are two different things. Yeah, I really do believe that Fields is going to be the pick. And I don't have an issue with it. If it's Fields, I'm happy, because I'm just like every other Niner fan, and I'm saying as long as it's not Mac, we're good. So that's where I'm at with it. So Fields, for me, I believe will be the pick. The guy that I think should be the pick is Trey Lance. And we obviously had the opportunity, Jack, to interview his quarterback coach, longtime quarterback coach. And we took a lot away from that interview. And for me, I'll just break it down into sections. Physical tools. He has ideal NFL size, ideal arm strength. He's mobile, and he throws well off platform. And I made this comment in the past, and I got killed for it. They're like, oh, what do you mean he throws well off platform? That's when he always struggled. It's like, well, I don't think you watched him enough, because he made a ton of plays. And if you don't have access to all 22, I recommend going into YouTube and just search every Trey Lance touchdown pass. That alone will show you exactly what I'm talking about. Off platform, I know that Zach Wilson gets a lot of credit for it. I think he's better off platform than Zach is personally. If I look at the mental tools, he ran a pro style offense. He played under center, and top to bottom, he was able to make adjustments at the line. If he didn't like the protection, he had autonomy to change that protection. If he didn't like matchups on the outside, he could change whatever routes are being ran and change the combinations on it. So to me, he's put together the mental aspect that needs to be put together to be an NFL quarterback, especially in a Shanahan system. And I know that a lot of people think, well, Shanahan, he doesn't want his quarterbacks making those adjustments. But he actually said during that press conference, he doesn't want a guy that's going to be a robot and just do everything that he says. He wants a guy that's going to challenge him a little bit. And I think Trey Lance is smart enough to do that. And being that he's ran an offense like that in college, he can come into the NFL and he can make that change. His intangibles, we just talked about it, chip on his shoulder. He was recruited to be a linebacker in the Big Ten and a safety. So he was told he couldn't play quarterback. Well, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He wants to prove everybody wrong. And then the last thing that I'll say is, we talked about Deshaun Watson a couple times. Deshaun Watson's in some hot water, and whether it's true or whether it's not, some bad decisions have been made that have gotten him here. And Trey Lance visits children's hospitals in his off time. I have no concerns about what type of person that we're getting and what type of leader that we're getting. This is the face of our franchise, and we need somebody that we know that we can trust to not make bad decisions and put the franchise in a good light. So for me, Trey Lance is the perfect guy.
Yeah. Did you want me to go next, Jack?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Great case, Jesse. I think Trey Lance is going to be a really, really good player. My only My only, I guess, fear with him is I still think he's going to need a lot of development. Like, he's somebody who will benefit from, taking the seat for a year. Reason being just he's missed a whole year of playing football due to the pandemic. So for me, with where the 49ers are and as far as like what Shanahan needs, I think that the pick has to be, Justin Fields. And for a lot of the same reasons that you're talking about, as far as like, for me, it's more of the intangibles. I think Justin Fields is a leader. I think that he's been under a microscope ever since he's, 16, 17 years old. I think we lost Jack.
Yeah, possibly. It's all right. We got this.
It's all good. And same thing, like you said, absolutely no character flaws, character issues, any red flags as far as him as a person. All of his teammates love him. Jack, you're back?
You're muted, I think. You might be muted
though. But yeah, so all for the same reason. I think Justin Fields is the most accurate passer. Clearly has shown over the last 2 seasons that he's right around 70% as far as completion percentage. Has mobility, has a super strong arm, and I think he's a leader. He's tough. He's played in big games. He's shown leadership not only on the field but off the field. And for me, that's the pick. That's the guy that you could build a team around, and he's going to be ready day one to come in and actually make an impact on the 49ers.
Before you go, Jack, I just want to say one thing, and this narrative kills me more than any other narrative. And anytime I bring up Trey Lance, this is the immediate thing is, well, this team is built to win now. You name me one rookie quarterback that has won a Super Bowl, and I'll sit on my hands. Until then, if we're built to win this year, then taking a rookie is the wrong answer. Like, it just is. We're not going to win a Super Bowl starting a rookie. Like, we have to come to grips with that. My opinion is we've got to look what long-term is best for the franchise. And if you think that's Fields, that's fine. I really don't have a rebuttal because I think Fields is fantastic. But I don't want to not take Lance if he is the best long-term answer because he may have to sit a year. I think that's the wrong way to look at it.
I agree. I don't think you want to take, be looking at a guy that and not take him because he's going to have to sit a year or whatnot. I think Trey Lance is a really good option. My pick is the same as it's been all along since I started watching these guys. I think Mac Jones is the best quarterback in the draft. When I look at quarterbacks, I start off with what they're able to do from the pocket, what they are able to do against, and that's where he wins all the time is from the pocket. He's able to stand in against the blitz, make the throws. He's not a guy that's going to go out there and beat you with his feet. That's not his game at all. Everybody can agree upon that. But he's the guy that he knows where everybody is on the field, and you can see that over and over again in his film. Every time almost every time that there's pressure on, he's able to get the ball out to an area. Sometimes it looks like it's there's nobody there, but a lot of that's because he's gotten the ball out of his hand so quick. I really think with Mac Jones that if he was at Ohio State, for example, he would have had the same kind of success that he had at Alabama because of his ability to get the ball out. That's where he differentiates himself from him to Justin Fields for me in all film that I've watched. Because there's plenty of times when you see Justin Fields and he just, it's almost like he's not seeing the field properly. He doesn't see the field. He doesn't know where his guys are. When he gets pressure, he's quick to leave, things like that. So for me, Mac Jones gets the ball out all the time. He's the most consistent of all of the quarterbacks from the pocket. So if I was going to rank them, it's Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields in terms of their pocket presence and what they bring. The only point where that changes is when you get to who's going to be the better runner and scrambler, and that's going to be Justin Fields. He's the best one on his once they break the pocket and have to run. But other than that, he's not. And the more that I've watched his film, the first time through, I wasn't too bad on him. I had him as my second quarterback. You got to remember, I didn't look at Trevor Lawrence because he was never expected to go to the 49ers.
Right.
So I had Mac Jones at 1, I had Fields at 2, and Trey Lance was down the road. When I went back through and watched these guys again to start doing the breakdowns after the trade, that's when it switched for me, where I started seeing a lot better traits out of out of Trey Lance than what I had seen before. And so I've actually moved him up to number 2. There'll be something coming out on this down the road. But for me, the of those three, the guy that has the biggest potential to bust, I think Justin Fields is going to have a really hard time in the NFL. And the reason is because he doesn't see the field very well on a regular basis. He's too inconsistent from the pocket.
Hey, Suneil, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Let's because I think this is gaining steam, and I really do still think it's a possibility. Let's say that Fields goes 2, all right, and we don't have a chance to get him. Mm-hmm. What would be your pick at that point?
Probably Zach Wilson. Okay. And once again, I think it's I'm not mad at the Trey Lance pick. I'm not I haven't gotten all 22, and I'm there's no way that I know as much as Jack knows as far as like breaking down the tape and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but yeah. None of us do, by the way. Don't feel bad about that. That's what worries me, by the way, is that he likes Mac Jones so much, and he's a film junkie. So it's like, oh God, what if?
Well, and here's my thing about Mac Jones. So if you look at the league now, right? I would say there's one quarterback that's playing from the pocket and actually like competing, and that's Tom Brady, right? So Mac Jones is going to have Tom Brady level IQ and football IQ to be able to make it with his lack of athletic ability. Every other quarterback that's competing has some kind of mobility, has the ability to run, whether it be Aaron Jones, whether it be
Aaron Rodgers.
I can't believe all these brain farts Aaron Rodgers right now. Aaron Rodgers, whether it be obviously Patrick Mahomes, even like a guy like Drew Brees, he made a big, like the last 2 years has kind of fallen off of a cliff because the defense has gotten so fast, right? And Mac Jones isn't going to have Alabama's offensive line. He's not going to have that much time like he had in Alabama, where he has the best athletes protecting him versus the defenses that he's going against as far as the athletes. Even though he played in the SEC, I just don't think the type of player he is going to be able to be successful with his lack of mobility, because the way that Tom Brady overcomes his lack of mobility is by the ultra work ethic, knowing the timing, and like just the IQ. Like I don't know enough about Mac Jones to see if he has that type of work ethic. By his body, it doesn't seem like it. By some of the decisions he's made in the off seasons, it doesn't seem like it. But then again, I'm outside looking in. So what do you think about that, Jack?
Jack, just a gut feeling. I know that you said that you would take Mac Jones. Just a gut feeling. Who do you think the pick is actually going to be?
I think the picks. My guess is probably it's going to be between Lance and Fields. It's probably going to be Fields, but I don't. That's just probably just going off what everybody's saying and wanting to have happen.
Yeah.
And the thing with let's just have this little conversation though. Understand that we're saying that these guys need to be able to move and run. We just had a long conversation about Jimmy Garoppolo and how the fact that the real reason why they're moving on from him was the fact that he wasn't healthy. Really, I think that's what we can all agree on that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. When you watch Mac Jones play, he can make the throws down the field on the outside of the numbers that Jimmy Garoppolo can't make, and he moves better than Jimmy Garoppolo. I know that a lot of there's a lot of film that's out there that shows him not being able to move and those kind of things. But if you really watch his games, he's not going to go out there and run your read option for you. That's one of the things we saw on Twitter this week. But he has the ability to move around like Jimmy Garoppolo. He's that kind of a quarterback as far as his footwork. He's better than that, and he's faster. The ball just comes out faster. When you're talking about, for example, Tom Brady and the ball coming out quick, that's where he is. I would actually go so far as to say that he made the offensive linemen at Alabama look better in pass protection than they are because of his ability to get the ball out.
My only thing is, I think with Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously the health played an issue, but I don't think Jesse made a good point. The way Shanahan talks about him, I don't think Shanahan could open up his whole playbook with a Jimmy Garoppolo. So it was kind of like Shanahan's so smart at offense that he's just like, we could win with this playbook because of the limitations of this quarterback. I feel like with a Mac Jones, it's the same type of situation where I know his arm's stronger and he's good at anticipation, but is he a limited quarterback because he doesn't have that other like, I guess, mode that could, play like on the bootleg, do the, option read, be somebody that breaks containment and runs up the field and gets a first down with his feet. I think that's just so necessary as a quarterback in today's NFL that I just, when you're talking about the number 3 pick, and it's not just because it's the number 3 pick, when you're talking about a Fields and a Lance being there as well, it's just hard for me to go with that option when I just feel like that type of quarterback is becoming more and more obsolete. And when Tom Brady's gone, it'll probably be, gone forever type of situation.
Yeah, I think the problem between Shanahan and Garoppolo isn't the fact that he's limited physically. The issue there is that he's limited with the ability to pick up what's happening on the defensive side of the ball. He's not, we hear a lot of people, one of the negatives that people throw out there for Justin Fields is the lack of processing, right? His inability to process certain things, whatever. He's not seeing the field, kind of like what I said, just in a different way. Mm-hmm. I think that's what the issue is with Jimmy Garoppolo, that he has, that Kyle Shanahan has with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that's part of what led to, if you remember back at the start of 2018, when there was a report that came out about how there was a possibility of Nick Mullins supplanting Jimmy Garoppolo if Jimmy Garoppolo struggled. If you remember that before the season started in the preseason. And I think that has a lot to do with it. If you kind of go through everything that we've heard, even this year with Mullins playing, we kept hearing about how smart he was, how he was the smartest quarterback in the room, all those kind of things. Who's telling those guys on Monday Night Football that, right? So that's all part of it, and that's where Jones is better than Garoppolo, at least in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I do like Trey Lance. I do like him a lot. It's a guy, to kind of get back to the train with where everybody wants to go towards. I can definitely get on the Trey Lance train. I think he'd be an excellent selection for the 49ers from the ability of he's plays well from the pocket again. He's got a quick release. He's got that mobility, and I think he'd be able to unlock some things out of Shanahan's playbook that maybe he doesn't do. Just
how would you guys I'm sorry. How would you guys compare Trey Lance to Carson Wentz?
It's hard for me to compare the two because I didn't see them at the same stage, right? But as far as from what I would say is just knowing what they were both tasked to do during their time at North Dakota State, I think that definitely bodes favorably for what Trey Lance is going to be able to do at the next level.
Yeah, I would say that they're actually pretty similar, and I don't have a problem with that. I really thought there was a time that I thought that Carson Wentz was a top 5 talent in the NFL, and I think injuries derailed him for sure. And, you can't predict injury. We just talked about it with Jimmy, and that's the reason why we're probably moving on right now. But, if he had been able to stay with Frank Reich and he hadn't gotten injured, it's a lot of what ifs. I really do believe that he'd be a top tier talent still in this league. I mean, he makes throws that almost nobody can make still. He didn't have any weapons. I think ultimately it was a bad fit in a bad situation, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong. But I'm looking at Shanahan, and, as much as I gave him hell earlier, I did say it. I believe that he's an offensive genius. And if he can get Trey Lance, I believe, although it could be a disaster if he's not able to sit, and there are situations where I could see it being a disaster, I also think that it could be the most beautiful masterpiece that Shanahan has ever painted. I really believe that.
Yeah. I wouldn't be upset if they picked Lance. I'd be upset if they picked Mac Jones. No,
me too.
I'm going to come on and fight afterwards.
I really trust Shanahan. I think that whomever he picks, he understands the decision he's making and the severity of his job's on the line, and I don't think he wants to be fired.
For sure.
So he's going to pick whoever he feels like is going to be the best to win. And I think he's looking at Super Bowl in the next 2 years or bust, basically, in his mind.
Yeah.
Agree with you 100% on that, because I actually wrote something about that a while back where it's his job's on the line. That trade and this move is the biggest move that they've done. So it puts all the pressure on Shanahan now to perform. He's always kind of had the excuse, I guess it's a poor word, but that's always been the one kind of thing to fall back on with him, right? With some of the lack of success that he's had throughout his career, either as a head coach or offensive coordinator from some of because his teams really haven't been very good at scoring or winning for the most part, although he's a really creative coach. But now he's going to have a chance to get his guy, and it's going to be really interesting to see who he chooses as his quarterbacks. This is the first time he's ever really going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Me too.
So, anyway, anything else anybody wanted to add before we jump off tonight?
No, I'm good. I want a couple things that I do want to point out. Just a couple things that were thrown out in the chat is a couple guys like Mac Jones is processing. They think that would be a reason to take him. Some guys said that they think Wilson's most likely to be a bust. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
And then Jason Gallion says that he prefers Fields. So, couple responses coming from the chat. It's funny because just like we were all over the place, the chat's all over the place.
Right.
And I feel like 49er Twitter really, for the most part, is all over the place. I think that there's a consensus that, Mac Jones is not who we want. But there's still a few people that believe he should be the right guy. And, other than that, we're kind of split as far as what should happen, So it'll be interesting to see. We got 2 more weeks, guys. 2 freaking weeks.
2 more weeks of content.
Finally figure this out. We can finally figure it out. Before we get off, Jack, if you don't mind, I want to plug a couple things. I want to say that this is the first time that me and Suneil have been able to be on camera together, but we are working on a project that will start next Tuesday. So if you follow us on Twitter, you'll probably get that shout out coming soon. But Tuesday we're going to be working together, but it's a little bit different. It's not what we're used to. So I'll throw that teaser out to you. Ooh. And I would say the other thing is Last Second Sports. Please follow my page because Jack and I are going to jump back and forth between his channel and my channel. And that's about it. I think we had a good show considering that we're 2 weeks away. I know that we're all excited, and I feel like the well is running a little bit dry as far as topics. So I think we'll do a good job.
Yeah, 2 weeks from tonight, we could be sitting back right here now. And we're going to know who the pick is. So
heck yeah.
So, all right, really appreciate having you on, Suneil. It was great to get a chat with you again today.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, guys. Let's do it again.
All right, fellas.
Thanks everybody for joining. If you guys can go ahead and if you're already logged in with my channel, that'd be that's awesome. I really appreciate it. If you could go ahead and subscribe if you're not, I'd really appreciate that as well. Thank you guys all so much for joining tonight.